Reflections on the Good News of Jesus Christ for the Feast of the Exaltation of the Cross, from the Gospel according to John. Jesus said to Nicodemus, "No one has gone up to heaven except the one who has come down from heaven, the Son of Man. And just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the desert, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, so that everyone who believes in him may have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, so that everyone who believes in him might not perish, but might have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him." The Gospel of the Lord. When did the cross officially enter your life? Well, for Christians, it was when you were baptized. The cross was traced on your forehead as a sign that, in one way or another, your life would be marked by the cross. It is an ambiguous symbol, the cross. For some, it is worn as just a piece of jewelry. For others, it is a mark of identity. For still others, it is a silent but powerful reminder of the kind of person they strive to be. It is a symbol with many meanings. What does it mean to you? For those who lived in the time of the Roman Empire, it was a constant reminder of the ultimate punishment meted out to those who dared to defy Roman law. A well-established means of execution in those days, widely used in the Roman Empire, one that left a distinct impression on those who watched. Despite the way we've seen it depicted in paintings and movies, this is how a crucifixion actually took place. The condemned person carried the cross beam, not the cross, just the beam, to the place of execution, typically outside the city gates, where many people would see. The condemned person was then stripped naked, then nailed and tied to the crossbeam, and then hoisted, nailed, and tied onto the upright pole, which was planted permanently in the ground. Far easier than how we see it depicted. The Romans were very efficient at executions. Crucifixion was not a quick way to die, because what caused death was asphyxiation and heart failure. Sometimes it took 3 days to die, depending on the condition of the one being crucified. For Jesus, it took far less time, something that is noted with surprise in the Gospel of Mark, probably because he had been weakened by having been up all night and then having been scourged. Not every prisoner was scourged. Usually it was reserved for those the Romans wanted to execute more quickly. Scourging started the bleeding, which hastened the prisoner's death. A very strange act of mercy. The thing to remember about the crucifixion of Jesus is that nowhere in the Gospels is there an attempt to play on the gruesome details, contrary to much pious literature, which exaggerates every gruesome detail. In fact, you have just learned a great deal more about the crucifixion of Jesus than you will find in all 4 of the Gospels combined. Indeed, the evangelists mention very few details for 2 reasons. One was that most people back then knew how a crucifixion took place. It was a common event in the Roman Empire. But more importantly, there is a constant effort to show that what happened here is total self-giving. Everything else is secondary. Nowhere do the gospel writers emphasize the intensity of the suffering. What they do emphasize is the love that did not shrink from this suffering. Why is this significant? It's because suffering as such has no merit in the Christian tradition. Now, that may come as a surprise to those of us who were raised with the message, if it feels good, it's probably sinful, or at least fattening, and if it feels bad, it's probably good for you. The suffering that does have merit is suffering which comes because one has loved. And that suffering is called sacrifice. There can be suffering without love. It's doubtful whether it has any value unless it brings someone to their senses. But in itself, suffering has no saving merit. But while there can be suffering without love, there is no such thing as loving without some measure of suffering. And this is the important thing to learn about the crucifixion of Jesus. It is not the story of how much Jesus suffered, but the story of how much Jesus loved. And therefore it is good news, because if he loved that much, then maybe his love reaches even me. Of course it does. How could it fail to reach every one of us? Everything else is secondary. This is the essence of the good news of Jesus Christ. Perhaps in your prayer, you might occasionally reflect on the image of Jesus crucified. You may even identify with Jesus. Yes, Jesus, I have been there. You were not understood, and I understand all that because I'm not understood either. So I know, Jesus, what that is. But before I identify myself readily with Jesus, I have to ask myself, why am I suffering? Is it because of my attempts to love? There may be many other reasons for suffering that have nothing to do with the suffering of Jesus, like not getting my own way. Or I'm suffering because someone does not love me as much as I love him or her. That person owes me happiness. Or I am suffering because my plans are not going my way at all. And so I can bang my head against the wall and suffer a lot. It won't hurt so much if I stop banging my head against the wall. But that is not what Jesus is doing. He is suffering because he has accepted the changes in his plans and moved with them, allowing them to take him into places he preferred not to go, as the agony in the garden taught us. When he was a little boy, or even at the beginning of his public ministry, Jesus did not dream about being crucified when he grew up. So when we give up all our plans, serve without thanks, serve until it hurts, and get no credit for what we are doing, then we can identify with Jesus. Because that kind of suffering is not so bad. It flows from love and leads to life and eternal salvation. How might the cross be present in your life? It might be in things you may not consider a cross, just the challenges that are part of everyday life. It may be the bills that you struggle to pay to keep a roof over your head and your family fed. It could take the form of the textbooks you use to teach your students, the tools you wield at the construction site, the computer that produces the reports and graphics that keep your business humming along. For some, it's the wheelchair required to maneuver through life, or the medicine needed to even have a life. Yours may be the soup you make and serve at the local community kitchen, or the soccer ball you use to coach a team of excited 6- and 7-year-olds. Some of the most beautiful crosses are the willingness to be always ready to listen to a person in crisis, the shoulder always available for the grieving to cry on, the smile that readily comforts, the heart that never fails to break with another's. Believe it or not, spouses are sometimes a cross for each other. Good friends readily accept one another, even when to do so may occasionally be a cross. Sometimes the most challenging and shattering experiences that seem like crosses in time become extraordinary and filled with life. What we learn from them can later be the source of transformative wisdom and understanding for ourselves and others. These are all crosses. Crosses we are asked to take up in the spirit of Jesus. We tend to think of crosses as burdens, things, and people that demand so much energy and time from us. We see our sufferings and our brokenness as crosses that condemn us to incomplete and unfulfilled lives of sadness and despair. Most days, we want to lay those crosses aside and never pick them up again. But our real crosses, excuse me, our real crosses, the crosses God places on our shoulders and Christ bears with us, can become sources of hope, of joy, of discovery, of life, of resurrection. They may well be the means to living lives to the fullest, the vehicles for discovering the meaning and purpose of this journey God has set us. Today's feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross celebrates several events in the development of the early Christian movement, including Empress Helena's discovery of Jesus' cross in Jerusalem around the year 328 AD. The dedication of churches built by his son, Emperor Constantine, sites of Jesus' crucifixion and burial. While Good Friday focuses on the passion of Jesus, today's feast challenges us to consider the cross itself, the instrument that can be the means to new life. Clearly, our crosses pale in the shadow of Christ's. But as the wood of his cross becomes the tree of Easter life, our crosses, when taken up in his spirit of humility and hope, can show what we will do for love. Thanks very much for listening. Please feel free to share this reflection with others if you choose. And of course, you're always welcome to subscribe to this weekly gospel reflection, which you can do on our website, which is www.justanother.disciple.com. Once again, www.justanother.disciple.com. Thanks again.